Hi, everybody. Again, as everybody said, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Helene Packman. I'm a speech and language pathologist at Lester B. Pearson School Board. I've been working for the school board for 24 years now, and I've been part of the Center of Excellence for Autism Spectrum Disorders for about that amount of time as well. So tonight I want to talk about declarative language. And as a speech and language pathologist, I've used this type of language in my practice for many, many years. So I'm coming at this as the perspective of a speech and language pathologist working with students that do have language difficulties, expressive language, expressing themselves, as well as comprehension. But the more I use this type of language, the more I realize that it's helpful for all children. So whether or not your child has any kind of diagnosis, is developing typically, or have any kind of learning differences, this type of language will really help in terms of speaking with your child. And at times during the presentation, we'll pause, and if there's any questions, Katie's going to be moderating the presentation. So we'll get started. So the goals for the evening is for everybody to understand the difference between imperative language and declarative language statements and why it matters. Then we'll pause and help you reflect on your own speaking style, because some people are naturally using declarative language, whether or not you have a label for it, and others have more of an imperative speaking style. So really for you to reflect on, how am I, the words I choose with my own kids, what does that look like? And then I'll share some resources as well. So most of what I'm going to be talking about comes from these two books. So the Declarative Language Handbook was written by Linda Murphy. She's a speech and language pathologist. The book came out in March 2020. So as you can imagine, at that time, we were all off and in lockdown. And then I started reading the book, and it really resonated with me because I had been using this type of language for a long time before she published this book. And it was really nice the way that it's laid out. Because when I tried to describe things to people, it wasn't always clear. So I found her book made it really clear as to how and why. And then a year later, she published the Co-Regulation Handbook. And really, declarative language and co-regulation go hand in hand. So both of them are really great books. They're available from Amazon, not very expensive. I think they're only about, what, $15 Canadian each. I think we recently purchased. And most of the school boards have copies of those as well that we purchased. We were fortunate last week to have Linda Murphy speak in a webinar that our Center of Excellence put on, and she was talking more about co-regulation at that time. So we'll get started. So the crux of it is that what you say and how you say and how you say it really matters. And that is especially with social learning differences. When I talk about social learning differences, I'm really talking about kids with any kind of learning differences, whether it be a learning disability, ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, expressive language disorder. Those are the kids where declarative language is really a game changer for those kids because they really do have problems processing language. So it really makes a difference for them. But as I said, this kind of language that we use really is helpful for all kids. So before we could get into what declarative language is, it's really important for you to understand the opposite. So the opposite is called imperative language. And what imperative language is when we ask a question or we state something, a sentence, but that demands a response. And oftentimes those responses are either going to be correct or incorrect. So when you ask a child, what color is this? It's a question and there's a right or wrong answer. When you tell a child, pick up your coat, the response is either they pick it up or they don't. So it's correct or incorrect. So that's what imperative language is. And you could be using that kind of language with a really nice tone of voice without really trying to be mean or anything. Things like, what are you forgetting? What should you have now? What are you supposed to do? What did I say? These are all questions that demand a response. So here are some examples of that. So sometimes when we're trying to help kids learn the letters of the alphabet, we'll often say, what letter is this? So again, it demands a response, and the response is either correct or incorrect. Sometimes when we pick up our kids after school, we might say, what did you do today? So there, we don't know if it's a correct answer because we weren't there, so we don't know, but it's demanding a response. You're asking a question. And oftentimes, if your kids were like mine, you'd say, what'd you do at school today? They go, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Or if they're playing a game and you say, turn off the game, again, it's requiring a response. They either turn it on, turn it off, or they don't. Do you have homework? And so again, sometimes kids will say no, and in fact, they do have homework. But again, it requires a response. Put on your boots. They either put their boots on or they don't. Hang up your coat. Same thing. They either hang it up or they don't. And this one, I hear parents and teachers say, what did I just say? So you're frustrated because it appears that your kids are ignoring you. And then we go to that imperative question. What did I just say? Again, similar to what did you do today? Like, what did you do at school today? And this one I hear often in the schools, say hi. So sometimes an adult or another child comes by, says hi, and our kids don't respond within 2 seconds. We're prompting them, say hi, say hi. And again, neither say hi or they don't. So all of these are examples of imperative language. Brush your teeth. That's another one, right? It's bedtime, and we're telling our kids along with the routine what to do. Brush your teeth. So why does this matter? So for many kids, especially those kids that have more sensitive systems, it could really place these demands. It activates that fight, flight, or freeze response. So Dr. Dan Siegel, he's written some books, The Whole Brain Child. This is the image that comes from one of his books. And what he does is he classifies our brain as an upstairs brain and a downstairs brain. And the upstairs brain is where all our thinking happens. So our memory, our reasoning, our language, all those things that we could reflect on are in our upstairs brain. And our downstairs brain is really that fight, flight, or freeze. So sometimes people call it the reptilian brain because it's like responsible for just our everyday life functions like breathing and digesting and eating. And it really is there because when we were living in caveman times, that we were on alert all the time. And so if we saw something in danger, we had to run or freeze. And you'll see those responses with animals as well. Like the rabbits will freeze, others will run. So what happens is when kids feel that there's a demand, it may not be real demand, it may just be a perceived demand, that sometimes their fight, flight, and freeze response becomes activated. And so what that might look like is you just ask a simple question, or you just ask for a simple, just doing something really simple, like put your dishes in the sink. And we think for us, that's just a request. When this is activated, especially we don't know like all the things that the kids are coming home with after spending a whole day of school, something that seems so easy for us. And our kids might have a huge response. So the flight would be that they just run out of the room. The freeze would be that it appears like they're not even listening to you. And the fight would be when you get those pushback, like, no, why do I have to do that? I'm not doing that. So that would look like the fight. And as I said, those kids with those sensitive nervous systems oftentimes react more to this. So what I'm proposing tonight and what Linda Murphy has talked about is using declarative language. So declarative language is when you're making a comment or a statement about your observations. And here there's no incorrect or incorrect response. So you're inviting your child to respond, but you're not requiring it, which is really an important aspect. Now, obviously, as parents, there are many times where you require a response. So I'm not saying that you have to use this language all the time, but the more we get used to using declarative language, the more you're going to see your kids feeling competent. They're going to start feeling more cooperative. You'll have like more of a connection in the moment with your kids. But obviously, if the school bus is going to come and you have to get out, you're going to become imperative. You're going to be telling what to do. You might even be helping because you have to. And obviously, when there's danger involved, if a car is coming, if they're leaving the house or doing anything that touching the stove, anything like that, obviously you're going to have to be more imperative. But in all those other interactions, the more you could use this type of declarative statements, you're going to feel the difference in how your kids respond and the connection that you have. So when you use these declarative language statements, your child's going to feel a lot more competent because you're going to be activating their own thinking as opposed to being told all the time what to do. And if you think about ourselves, if you have a day where everybody's telling you what to do, by the end of the day, you're just like fed up, that you don't want to be told all day long what it is you have to do. And the kids will also feel a lot more connected to what's going on and felt heard and understood, as opposed to always feeling like everybody's always telling me what to do. So I'm going to just give you a few examples before we get on to some other ones. This example just happened yesterday. So I was working with a little guy, he's 7, and he very much ADHD, undiagnosed, but just everybody that comes in contact with this little guy, he's always on the move, one of those little guys. And so I was working with him, and he had his water bottle with him, and we're about to leave the room, and I remembered that he left his water bottle on the table. I could have said to him, "What did you forget?" Or I could have said to him, "Oh, go get your water bottle." And knowing this little guy, if I had said, "What did you forget?" he would have bolted out of the room. He would have been out of there so fast. It's like, stop asking me questions. This is what's going through his head. If I said, "Go get your water bottle," maybe he would have gotten it. But it wouldn't have activated any thinking because, as we know, kids with ADHD, oftentimes they're scattered. They have no idea where things are or what they've gotten. So it wouldn't help him think in the moment in another time. So I said to him, "Uh-oh, I think you forgot something." So instead of asking, "What did you forget?" I made a statement, "I think you forgot something." And I waited. And I could tell on the look of his face. He said, "Huh?" Like he had no idea what I was even talking about. He forgot that he even had a water bottle. And then I said to him, "I think it's on the table." And so then he turned around. I had to give him time and space to figure out what I was saying and what does that mean. So I'm not talking anymore and I'm not giving him any more direction. He turned, he saw his water bottle, he picked up and went, "Oh," and he had this huge smile on his face because in the moment he felt competent because he figured it out on his own. And then he left and went back to class. So just those little examples make these kids feel really competent, and you know that they feel competent because they're going to have this little smile on their face to show that they have figured it out for themselves. I'll give another example of being in a classroom and a little guy is, those bingo daubers where they have all the paint. And if you've ever used those with your kids, they can make a huge mess. So this little guy figured out that if I just go like this, that the paint goes everywhere. So now he has paint like on the table, paint on the floor. And I said to him, "Oh no, there's paint on the floor." So I'm sharing my observation of what I see, and I'm not offering a solution. I'm just sharing my observation. And he just said, "Yeah." So he's agreeing with me, there's paint on the floor. So then I had to move a little bit more and say to him, "Oh, if people step on the paint, it might get paint everywhere, and then the classroom will be a mess." And then he's looking at me and I said, I wonder if your teacher has any paper towel to clean it up. And again, it's an invitation. I'm not asking him to clean it up. I'm not telling him what to do. And then he got excited and he said, oh, I know where she keeps things. And he ran to where the towels were and where the water bottle was to clean. And he had this huge smile on his face because he figured out what needed to be done. And I know if I had asked him, you got to clean this up. Look at the mess you made. Why are you doing that? You have to stop. It would have just kept on going and he wouldn't have helped clean it up. But again, it was an invitation. I wasn't requiring him to clean it up, but he was happy to do that with me. So those are a few examples. So it really provides by using declarative language because you're sharing your own observation of what's going on. And you're actually highlighting the problem rather than always telling our kids the solution. So when I said, oh, there's paint on the floor, I'm highlighting the problem. And that's the problem, that there's paint everywhere. And I'm not offering the solution. We're pausing, so we're allowing kids time and space to read some of the nonverbal communication, how we're feeling, what our facial expression is, and you're really helping them problem solve on their own. And sometimes when we make these statements, we're also giving the perspective of another person as well. Like when I said, oh, kids might step in it, and then the classroom is going to get dirty, you're offering another perspective that maybe they hadn't thought of. And then it also leaves space for self-advocating. So instead of just kids saying no, if you just open up space by making a statement, they may come around with the reason why they don't want to do something. But again, we're inviting a response. We're not requiring it. And I keep repeating that over and over. So if we looked at our imperative statements, when we were talking about helping kids learn the letters of the alphabet, instead of saying, what letter is this? Just tell them, this is the letter V, and you wait. And oftentimes kids will then like repeat it. Oh yeah, V, but you're not requiring them to repeat it. And if you're showing more letters and you're pausing before you offer what the letter is, if a child knows the answer, they're going to tell you. If they don't know the answer, then you're providing that answer. Because what you're doing is you're providing them information. And when you're asking a question, when you already know the answer, what I say about that is what you're doing is just testing them. So if you're asking one of those questions and you already know the answer to it, the kids feel like they're being tested over and over and over again. And oftentimes they fail that test. So if you're trying to help your kids learn the letters of the alphabet or any other concept, and you're asking them questions, you're really testing that knowledge. But if you're giving that information and then you pause, kids want to show you what they know. So if they do know what the name of a letter is, they're going to be providing it. So a lot of it's a really hard concept to get around because we're so used to, especially educators, always quizzing kids. And that's especially kids with any kind of learning differences or learning challenges, they really feel put on the spot. And that's when you get a lot of shutdown and a lot of refusal and a lot of homework battles. That question, like, who did you play with today? Just making a statement. I hope you had a chance to do something fun at recess today. And then pause and let it sit in the air. And so you're inviting a response, but you're not requiring it. But what happens is if you ask a question and there's no response, then we almost feel as parents that we have to push further because you feel like you're being ignored and you don't want your kids to be ignoring adults. So often we then push for more because we feel like we're being ignored. But if you just make a statement and there's no response, there's no ignoring because it was an invitation to respond. They didn't have to respond. So instead of asking, do you have homework? Make it a partnership. Let's look in your bag to see if there's any homework. And then you pause. And oftentimes kids will come with you to the school bag. And if not, it's an invitation. And you say, okay, well, then I'm going to go look. And you go look to see if they have any homework. Because in the end, you probably are going to look anyway. So that's what people say too. Like, am I just like doing things for my kids? But you know what? In the end, you are doing things for the kids because especially those kids that say no, in the end, you do it. If you're telling them every step in the way, like what to do, they're not thinking on their own. They're just waiting for you to tell them what to do. So by this invitation of giving them the information, you really are working on those problem solving skills and those independent skills. The other question is, instead of saying put on your boots, you could say, oh, your boots aren't on, and then wait. With declarative language, it's really like in the moment. So there is no right response of how you phrase things. You just are being cognizant that you're not asking a question and you're not telling your child what to do. So it depends on the situation. Sometimes kids are so busy like looking around, I might say, oh, I think your brain is thinking about the video game that you wanted to play and you're not thinking about putting your boots on. And sometimes that's enough to, like, kids will realize, oh yeah, you're right, I'm thinking about the video games. Instead of saying pick up your coat, you could say, oh, your coat's on the floor, and then wait. It's the wait time that's really, really important, because kids really need time to process your words of what you said and then formulate a response of how am I going to respond to this. Some kids might just say yeah and run off. But you can follow that up with, oh, people might step on your coat and it'll get dirty, or oh, your coat's going to be in the water, or whatever it is that you want to respond. And then you can offer an invitation, let's hang it up together. Sometimes they'll run off, and that's okay, because if you said hang up your coat, they would probably run off as well. So again, you know your kids best. Instead of saying, what did I just say? You could say, I'm not sure you heard what I said, because oftentimes kids are really distracted and they aren't hearing what you said. And when you say, what did I just say? There's that tone, even if we're, as parents, we always have that tone. So we really want to make sure that neutral tone. And I actually used that today with a student. I could tell he was distracted. He was playing with something. And I said to him, oh, I'm not sure you heard what I said. And he says, no, I didn't. And so I repeated it. So that's where that self-advocacy comes in, advocacy. But when you accuse by saying, what did I say? It's almost like an accusation. And then kids feel like badly, and they don't want to respond with what you said. Or they'll repeat what you said, but they haven't really processed what that means. So one or the other. Sometimes they'll just repeat it. And this one comes from Linda's book, is oftentimes when we have people come over, we want our kids to appear polite. So if grandma comes over and our kids are playing and they don't respond right away, it's always, come say hi to grandma, come say hi, come give grandma a kiss, come give grandma a hug. So instead of just saying, say hi to grandma, you could say, oh, grandma said hi, and wait. Or you could say, oh, grandma's here, and you wait to see. And sometimes kids, they just didn't realize you're highlighting the information that's there. Sometimes they don't realize they're there. Grandma would really like to see you. Grandma would love it if you came and said hi. Those kinds of statements, and waiting. And hopefully your kids will come and say hi, or in some other response, or maybe grandma will come. I'm always on the lookout for imperative language and declarative language, because once you start using this kind of language, it's everywhere. And when you hear a lot of imperative language, it really starts to bother you, because you realize the kids aren't responding. You see the stress in the kids, and you just want to like jump in and start using declarative language. So the other day, a neighbor was there with her daughter and her granddaughter, and I came over and I waved. Hi. The little girl was about 2. And right away, the mother says, say hi. And the kid's not responding. She doesn't know me. I'm like, first time she's seen me. And then, like, again, the prompting, say hi. It's like, we, as parents, you want your kids to do that. But if she had given her the time and space, and with me just saying hi and waving and me giving space, maybe she would have waved and said hi. And then I just went on using declarative language because it happened to be snowing, say, oh, it's snowing. And I waited to see if there was going to be a response. But then the mom came in and said, look at the snow, and telling her, being very, very imperative. So I never really got to have a nice interaction with this little 2-year-old because mom was being very imperative with her. So instead of saying brush your teeth, get on your pajamas, it's great to say it's time to. So use that kind of language, just giving that information. It's time for bed. And instead of saying, what do you have to do? You can wait. You could also give more information if you use timers or clocks to say, in 5 minutes, it's going to be time for bed. So you're giving that information. And when your child then whines and says, oh, I don't want to go to bed, you could just empathize with them. Yeah, I know it's hard to put away your toys. It's hard to turn off the game, but it's 8 o'clock and that's bedtime. And so you're just giving that information. What's super important when you're using declarative language is the delivery. So you really have to slow the delivery of your message and give one piece of information at a time to see how they respond. And then what other information do they need in the moment? So that's where you have your wait time. Maybe this is a good time, Katie. Is there any questions at all right now?
So far, there haven't been any questions, but I think it's, I love hearing you speak. I feel like it's so great that you're sort of emphasizing the idea that parents are no longer sort of giving directions to their kids all the time, but rather giving information to their kids. It's like you're on the same team if you're giving this type of information, if you're using declarative language. So it's great. So keep on going. I think people are
Okay.
taking it in. Hopefully.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So this is again another example from Linda Murphy's book. So she talked about when her little guy was about 3 or 4 years old, and they were going to be playing Candyland. You may recognize the pieces to that game. And his body was all over the board. Now, she might have said, oh, sit up, move away, get off the board. So those are all imperative statements because you're telling him what to do and it's requiring a response. He's going to get off the game or not. So instead, she said, oh, your body is on top of the game. So you're giving information and the wait. So she waited and waited because he's little. He needed to take in that information, take in what's happening, his surroundings, what's happening. And then he said, oh, and he got up and he moved. It's when the kids say, oh, that, oh, they're thinking and they're problem solving for themselves because they're looking at the situation and they're figuring out what is it that they have to do in order to play the game. Another, just also being very explicit in terms of your expectations. So people say, well, if I'm just inviting a response, am I allowing them to do whatever they want? But you could also use declarative language to set up a situation. So this reminded me because there's a game there. There's a little girl that I work with in one of my schools who actually I don't work with her directly. She's one of those kids that's always in the hall because it's really difficult for her to spend a lot of time in the classroom. And she was being picked up early and she had an appointment and she wanted to play a game with a friend. But we knew that the game she wanted to play is going to take longer than the time she had before her mom came. So I said, I know you really want to play this game, but it might take long. You may not get a chance to finish it. And then I set a timer. Your mom's going to be here at this time. You can start it, but you may not have time to finish it. And I waited to see what she said. And she said, no, I want to play. And I said, okay. But remember, when the timer goes off, it means the game has to be put away and your mom's going to be here. So the people that know this little girl are like, I don't know, because they know that she has trouble stopping what she's doing. So they're playing the game and nobody's interfering and they're playing the game. And then when there was like that 2-minute warning, I said, oh, the timer's going off in 2 minutes. And I didn't remind her about the rest because she knew the rest. And then the timer went off. And here was the important thing. I waited because she knew the information. She knew that when the timer went off, it meant it was time to clean up. But if somebody had said the timer's off, put away the game, that's when the explosion would have happened. So sometimes kids just need that one more turn, or they're in the middle of a turn, but I waited. And she sure enough put the game back. And she, with her friend, put it away. And then we said, oh, that's great. You put the game away. And then I waited again. And I said, oh, your mom's going to be here. And she got up and she got dressed because she knew what that meant, that she was going home. But if I had said, now you have to go and put your clothes on and hang up your backpack and do all these things, her fight and flight response would have been activated. And she would have probably protested a little bit, maybe sprawled on the floor, those kinds of behaviors. And then when I talked about competence, the smile on her face, because she figured it out on her own, she felt successful and nobody was telling her what to do. She had the information that she needed to be successful.
Helene, should I share a story?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I was in a school the other day and I was working with a student that I'm in love with. And he's physically larger than everybody else in the class. So if he gets upset, it just seems bigger and louder and more intense for everybody around. And it was time to go for recess. And one of the students said, oh, can I fill up my water bottle? And the teacher said, yeah, you're the first. But he had already run out of the class to go to his locker area to get his water bottle. And then he ran to the water fountain and went in front of that student to go fill up his water bottle. And the other student was like, okay, I'm not going to say anything because he felt like there might be an altercation. He wasn't ready for it. And I turned to the student and I said, oh, you left the class and you didn't hear that the teacher actually said that so and so would be the first to fill up his water bottle. And I waited, and the child, you could see, was like, oh, he was getting ready to get upset, And I said, your friend is really thirsty. It would be such a nice thing to do, to be such a good friend, if you let him fill his water bottle. But you know what? I put it out there. This was the information he missed. He didn't have the context. He didn't know he got the information that he was the first. And that his friend, that being a good friend means that you sometimes let someone go first. But I didn't say to him, no, you're not the first. The teacher said this, because right away that would have been a huge explosion. So he starts filling his water bottle, which I could have stopped him and then he takes his water bottle away and he says, oh, you can fill your water bottle first. So I let it go for a minute, and then he filled his water bottle, and the guy that I was working with filled up his water bottle. Said, you're such a good friend. These are the kinds of things that are really, really kind, And then the next day he was working in a small social skills kind of group. And the person that was working with asked all the kids to draw a picture of what did you do to fill someone's bucket in terms of kindness? And he drew a picture of him letting his friend fill his water bottle first. It seemed like the smallest thing, but it could have been a huge altercation, but instead it was giving him the context, giving him the wait time, and allowing him to decide what kind of a person did he want to be sort of in that moment. And it was huge for him. It seemed like very small, but it was huge for him, so much so that the next day, that was the thing that came to his mind the most, not some other thing that you think that a kid would, So it really does make a huge difference. And I find it really brings out the best in our kids.
Yeah. And it really makes them feel competent because he thought of it on his own. He wasn't told what to do. And for him to reflect on that the next day, he was feeling super competent. I love
It
that
was
story.
huge. And you could see all the teachers around going, this is going to end badly. I know, and it didn't. And it was beautiful,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people think the worst of kids.
Yeah.
But when you give the kids the information they need in the moment, they really do
Yeah.
surprise us sometimes.
Yeah. And when
Yeah,
they think you're on their side,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So one of the things, because I'll hear statements like, I tried declarative language, but it didn't work. So declarative language isn't trying to trick somebody into doing something. It's really just a way of being, of connecting with their kids and giving them information. And we're not using declarative language as a trick to get someone to do something. So if you have that mindset that I'm going to use this kind of language because I want them to do something, and then you're disappointed when they don't do it, there's a word for that, and it's called passive aggressive. And so we know all those passive aggressive people because you know what their intent is behind their statement, and they're just not being direct. So then, like, you're breaking that relationship as well when your statements are with the tone of voice of that you're trying to get them to do something. So if you have that framework of, oh, it didn't work, or I want them to do this, then no, you have to really, like Katie said, you give them the information and you give them the opportunity for what they're going to do with that information without requiring them. And oftentimes, like I said, they will rise to the occasion if they're given enough information at the right time, because it is pacing. So I we've been talking this too, like amongst colleagues, and I had a colleague who said, oh, this works with husbands too. I don't know if there's any dads out there, but oftentimes it's the wives who are trying to get their husbands to do something. So, and then there's always that altercation, right? And then the accusation. So she liked her mugs when emptying the dishwasher a certain way. So organized and by color, by size, like on the shelf, right? But her husband never does that. He just empties the dishwasher, puts them everywhere. So I'm going to try this with my husband. So she says, oh, I noticed that you put the cups on the shelves random order. And he looked at her and said, I'm not doing it the way you want to do it. You can't make me do it. Like, so right away, she says, oh, it didn't work. So again, it's that intention of using declarative language because you want him to do something, to get him to do something. And like kids will see through that as well. They'll see it as like, I'm not listening to you. You're just trying to trick me. But when it's an invitation, and I said, well, you could just say, oh, it makes me upset when you put the dishes like that and you're not expecting him to change. You're just giving information. But they won't change. So oftentimes when we play games with kids, this is a great time to practice declarative language because it does take a while to sort of change the way your speaking style is. So when you're rushed to get ready for school or get ready for bed, this isn't the time to start trying to practice declarative language because we're all in a time crunch and we want to get things done. But if you're just practicing when you're playing a game to see what kinds of questions are you asking. So when I see people playing games like Candyland, you often hear the adults saying, whose turn is it? What color did you get? Where you're going to move your man? So there's constant questions being asked. So if you could just, even in playing a simple game, practice those declarative statements. So you would say, oh, I just had my turn, and wait. And then somebody will say, oh, it's so and so's turn or so and so's turn. Or even saying, oh, I don't know whose turn it is now. You could say, I just had my turn. And then when they turn over a card, wait to see what they do. So that's another thing. We often question, what color is this? Where are you going to go? Without even giving kids the time and space to look at the card, to see what color they have, to see where they have to go. And if they go to the wrong one, that's when you can say, oh, your card has one red. That means you have to go here. And then you're giving them the information that they need. Katie, can you think of any other examples? Normally in a presentation where it'd be open for questions, I have other people like come up with examples of.
I mean, I think like if you're a parent of a really young child, it's more just finding ways oh, I see this or I see that. It's giving those comments that allow people, like, to allow the kids to have that space. If you're reading a storybook, like, oh, I see the crocodile, that person looks scared or this is happening. And then to see it, and it allows the kids to say, okay, you know what? You don't have to fill the space with language, but you can. No one's
Yeah.
asking a specific answer. It's just something that could come from the child. And I think that that's the really important thing here, that you're not testing the kids, you're not questioning the kids, you're not giving them that pressure to give a response. The idea that you're filling the space with information and it invites them. What I see a lot is people going over to kids and asking them questions that they know the answers to already. So like the kid opens their lunchbox, like, what do you have in your lunchbox? And you're opening the lunchbox and you're looking at it just as much as they're looking at it. And the kid's kind of like, you can see, you know what I mean? And
Yeah. Yeah.
instead,
Exactly.
it would be saying something like, oh my goodness, look, you've such a nice sandwich in here. I love cheese sandwiches. And then you wait and allow the child to be like, well, actually, I love these cookies, that kind of thing. And that allows sort of a thing, a dialogue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about sharing your observations of what you see rather than asking those questions. And then when the game, like I'm going back to Candyland, like if the game's finished, you say, oh, the game's finished. And you wait to see, like, do they know to clean up? Like, so to say, now we're going to clean it up. You just say, oh, the cards go in the box. So the board goes in the box. And just even, let's put them together.
Oh, there are so many pieces here. It's a lot for me. Like just kind of giving that context and that information. So they start to think, oh, you know what, that does seem like a lot for mommy to be doing by herself.
Another encounter that I often see is in the store. So this is where I get to see a lot of observations of parents.
Helene, sorry to interrupt. Can you share your slide? Because when you went to share the video, it went to a different format. I wanted you to see if you could do slideshow, if it'll be a bit bigger, the picture.
Oh, that's strange. Okay, hold on.
Actually, let me try that with declarative language. I noticed, Helene.
And it stopped. Okay, that's strange. Okay, let me, so it's,
Oh, we got a laughing emoji. We have signs of life from you guys. I love it.
Signs of life, share screen. Let me see. I don't know why it's not.
Oh, and a thumbs up. For us, it floats into the abyss. I love it.
Floats into the abyss. Did it get to full screen?
No, but you know how you can do a slideshow or something?
Yeah, I just have to.
Full
Full
slides or whatever.
Yeah,
it's fine otherwise.
Let me go back to my Google Chrome, my Drive. I don't know. I've lost it. Oh, well, for the last few slides, we'll have to just bear with the.
Do you see full interactive slides as an option? On the top, the third option, sort of underneath the address.
It's very strange because normally I do, but it's got my screen, right? It has my whole screen.
I see it. Oh, you're
all
close.
of those things
there.
and all my things and.
No, but you just went over it right there. It's like you're getting warmer right there.
Warmer.
A little bit higher.
Full interactive slides. I found it.
Yay! There you go.
There, I found it. Okay. Yay! It's been a while. Okay, back to my observations in the store. Okay, so you're shopping with your child and they see something on the shelf and they pick it up. I hear parents say, we're not buying it. Put it back. We're not buying it. We're not buying it. Instead, you could just share your observation. Like, oh, that's really cool. And talk about what it is. And then say, ooh, maybe you could get something like that for your birthday. And then the kids, at that point, if you know your kid, may say, no, I want it now. That's when you'd say, oh, I know you really want it. It looks like a really fun toy, but we can't buy it now. And if you've been using declarative language along the way, it's possible they'll put it back. If not, there'll be a fight. But I can guarantee you when you say put it back, we're not buying it, if you have that kind of kid, they're still going to have a fight. So it's worth giving them the chance to take in the information and then make the decision on their own. I'm not saying, because again, we're not trying to get kids to do something. And then in the end, you might have to say, I'm sorry, we're going to have to put it back. And you may have to just, take it out of their hand.
And Helene
Katie and
also,
I have a mutual friend, or just one story. Katie and I have a mutual friend where her kids didn't realize till they were 5 years old that you could actually buy things at a store, because they used to go to Toys R Us just to look.
like a museum.
Like a museum.
Toys, yeah.
And it was only when they were like 5 or 6, when they got birthday money, they're actually able to buy something, that they didn't realize that they could take these things home, because she would just use declarative language and look at all the things and comment on how cool everything is. So that's just another example.
And I think what you said also, Helene, not only did you sort of share that moment with the child, that looks amazing, you showed interest, you're on their side, you got to their level, but you also said, that could be something good for your birthday. So it's not put it back, you're never going to have it, this is never something you could ever have. There's a possibility. And I think a lot of people, let's say at home, that they want to watch a TV show, or they want to have a cookie or whatever it is. The idea of, oh, we're going to have dinner, but after, that would be a good time to have a cookie. Or after, you finish your homework, maybe we can, then we can watch a show. So the idea that you're giving them the context that they will be able to get the things that they want, just in a reasonable, in a logical sequence, or in a reasonable sort of, situation.
And my last example here is doing homework. So here would be, you're filling in the numbers, and what you're doing is you're giving information about what the homework is that you have to do. So you're modeling the first few by saying, oh, I see what I have to do, and going and looking at that number 200 and pointing and saying 200, and then you point to the next one and you wait. If they know that that's 201, they're going to say it. If not, you provide that information and you keep going. When you get to the blank, you say, oh, the next number's 204, and you wait. And if kids don't know how to write it, you don't say, can you write it? Put it down. Do you know how to write 2? Write a 2. You're not telling them to do anything. Then you write in the first answer, and that's okay. Teachers are okay with that. And then you wait and you do the next one, 2004, and you wait. 2005, and you're modeling it. Maybe they need a number line. So you're providing all that information and the wait time without asking, what do you have to do? What are you going to put down? What number are you going to write? What's the first number? Because kids then feel tested. You can even model, this is what 204 looks like, and put it on a whiteboard and show them, because maybe in the moment they can't remember how to write it. So you're providing that support with homework by using declarative language and not quizzing them and testing them. Because for the kids that you struggle with homework, it's probably because they feel incompetent, because they don't know what to do. Because if they did know what to do, chances are you wouldn't be having homework struggles. So just a pointer out there. Just take notice of, when you're doing homework, how many questions we're asking, and how many testing questions, and we're not giving enough support of, this is how we do it. This is how we go about it. So just a few more examples. So these would be like very open-ended questions. So, but some kids might need more. So here it's like, mom is carrying heavy bags. Like if mom's coming out of the car with the grocery bags, that might not be enough information for some kids. Or, I see your coat on the hook, meaning like it's time to put your coat on. Like they might not be enough information. Your friend is curious about your Pokemon cards. Again, it might not be enough information. So for some kids, they might need more information for them to understand the context. So mom is carrying heavy bags, and I think it will help her a lot if we hold the door. I'm happy to do it, or you could. So again, you're giving information, you're giving an invitation to help or not. Your friend is curious about your Pokemon cards. If you're comfortable, I bet he would love to look at them with you. So you're not requiring that response, but you're giving information, that perspective taking that we talked about at the beginning, for kids to know, like how another child might feel. So again, you're developing those problem solving skills with kids, and being able to figure out on their own. What I'm going to do is just go towards, we're running out of time. So really change happens one step at a time. So if you're used to using a lot of questions and a lot of imperative language, it's not that easy to change, because it's just part of who we are. So the first step really is to just take note of questions and state and commands that we're giving, even though we're not necessarily using a commanding voice, but just how many times we're like telling kids what it is they have to do. Oop, oop, this one. Um, and this is from Linda Murphy's website, and there is a link to her website where it's how do you know that change is sort of happening? So this is sort of the path from the bottom up. That to know like that you're getting comfortable with using declarative language. So you're going to notice that you're changing from a lot of demanding language to more positive, inviting language. You might notice that there's going to be less power struggles with your child, and you'll notice like a relationship changing. Your child might be more open to share more information, to give more information. And you'll notice that you might be pausing yourself to create more problem solving opportunities, and that you'll notice that your child is actually referencing and taking note of the environment more and taking more initiative without even being needing those prompts and cues anymore in the declarative language. And you're going to notice, and this is what I've noticed, the more people use this kind of language, they really feel it in their kids. So the kids start to feel more competent and empowered, to solve problems, and you'll feel it. Like you'll see when your kids start to feel like really competent, and you'll see those little smiles, and you'll see that body language that they're feeling a lot more competent. So on her website, and there'll be a link, she's got a lot of free downloads. So a lot of these things that I was showing you are from her website. She's been very generous in giving a lot of handouts and more information about like when things get emotions escalate. So there's a lot of really great cheat sheets. She's also has a lot of her own interviews. So if you're more interested in this topic, she has all the podcasts where she's spoken at, and it's really nice to hear her point of view as well. So she's been on like several podcasts. So you could find those, or even if you Google search Linda Murphy declarative language, you'll be able to find a podcast probably to hear her if you'd like more information. So it's really just time to start to reflect on your own speaking style.